Well, welcome to the messy side of the house, and we have a small engine here. We also have a big 24-volt alternator there, which I have dealt with before. This little thing here was a recent donation. This is a Chinese electric start engine that belonged to my late brother. My brother passed away after taking his own life about 10 years ago or thereabouts. Very stressful situation that's taken a long time for myself and most of the family to in any way partly recover from. However, this has been sitting in my father's shed all that time. My father's finally decided he's going to let it go. My brother, before he passed away, was planning on making a generator out of this. In other words, adding an alternator to this. He was going to go the 12-volt route. I am going to go the 24-volt route for the 6-wheel drive ambulance. We have a big 24-volt alternator hiding under here that is the same as the one in my 6-wheel drive Land Rover Parenti ambulance. We may use that. The regulator is knackered, or if I get lucky I might be able to procure a smaller one. Alright, we're going to tackle this carby now and the fuel bulb. I've got to find a socket that fits it. Alright, now 10mm, I guessed right. Now we have my new neighbour slash mechanic in attendance as well, so we're going to get him to help out with a few things. So we're just going to pull this fuel bowl off for a start entirely. So you have your drain and your fuel bowl removal bolt, and this is some of the residue of like oil and fuel that's like evaporated away over years and years and years. We're going to clean it out with some carby cleaner, and I have no doubt the rest of the carby is probably just as bad as well. Alright, we're going to give this just a quick little pre-soak to start with, just to get things soaking, and then we'll find a rag and give it a scrub out. It's alright, we're going to get our mechanic to do this bit. Sometimes this stuff takes quite a bit to come off, which that is how your carby jet gets blocked, is when this sort of stuff ends up forming like an enamel coating in the jet, which is a pretty tiny little hole. I've got a toothbrush we can try out with that one. Give it a bit of a more of a soak.
You know what, I'm starting to regret my choices on clothing.
You're standing in the full sun. I'm surprised you actually get hot. There's a bloke who lives up in the bloody desert end of the country and walking around in a hoodie on a 38-degree day. And then there's me who goes, hey, it's more than 25 degrees, I'm sweating, I'm going inside. Alright, now to explain what goes on here, your fuel comes down from the outside around here, and it fills up this fuel bowl here. And the nut holding it on goes in here, so your fuel comes through this hole and goes up into the jet that's in there. And they use what's called the Venturi system, or Venturi action. As they blow air over the top of the little jet, it sucks a bit of fuel in. And this fuel float, as the fuel comes up, it stops allowing fuel into the bowl. That means if you rev it up and start using a lot more fuel, this drops down and starts letting more fuel into the fuel bowl. Now we're going to spray a little bit down the top here and try and clean the jet that way. One of the reasons you use carby cleaner and not brake cleaner here is carby cleaner generally won't dissolve plastic, for the most part. I'm doing this with the fuel bowl off so that it can drip out the bottom. Okay, so now we've got to drain the old oil. This has an oil drain plug on both sides, which is actually convenient for a change. And of course we need to suck this out pretty quick before it goes all over the bench. Alright, I think we're pretty well empty. That's good. Make sure we've got it all out. That's good. Alright, now we can put some new oil in. Okay, so we have our mini oil bottle, and we've got some 10W30 Briggs & Stratton oil. Yeah, ideally I'd put 5W in it, but this is what I put in my small generator, and it works reasonably well. So we're going to fill up a few of these. I think some of this thing's issue might have been that it was a bit over full with oil, looking at how it behaved. So I pretty well assume that when we fill this up, because this is splash lubricated, the crankshaft splashes oil over stuff, and that's how it lubricates it. It doesn't have an oil pump. So I think that we're supposed to fill this up until it gets to the level of the fill plug. That's how most of these work. Okay, now that we've made a horrible mess, we're going to put the drain plug back in, which these ones are really easy to cross thread, as I found out. All right, not to over tighten. Now these are 200 mil, and it took about 2.5 of these, so that's about a half a litre. So, which is nice, there's not too much oil. All right, now we need to get a bit of clean fuel, and we need to put some oil on the, while we've got the oil out, we'll put a bit of oil on the air filter. We'll take this little, this is a normal paper air filter with a foam attachment on it. We need to get this foam bit off and put a bit of oil on it. All right, so now we've got our air filter element out. We're going to pour a little bit of oil on and squeeze it through, and then drop everything on the floor. Okay, and then we're just going to stretch that back over the top of the air filter here, and then we'll get some of our stuff from Grit Mitts, who's a sponsor of ours. Well, rather, I approached them. That's how they came to be a sponsor, because their stuff is good. So yeah, let's clean the hands and come back to this. All right, so Grit Mitts was a company that had really good stuff, and I approached them and they ended up agreeing to sponsor me with some stuff. This is their liquid stuff. You put it on dry hands and give it a good scrub, and it gets all that sort of stuff off. I did this once with used diesel oil, and normally the black rings you get around your fingernails and stuff, they come right off. All right, we've got good clean hands. Let's get back to it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is to our air filter back on. I'll plonk you on if I can do that one-handed. Now somewhere here we have a little wing nut. We'll put that on. Oh, I'll let the extra hand do that. And yeah, we'll see if we can crank it up. We'll put a bit of fuel in and find a battery, see what happens. I won't put too much in here, just enough to get her started. We'll have a look. That's probably plenty. How much is in there? Yep, there's enough in there for it to pick up the fuel. You can do that bit. I'll do this bit.
It needs to be like that.
Aha. That's a bit I didn't spot. Okay, so we need to go back to our 10mm socket again. We need to undo this one and let a bit of fuel drain through. When the fuel starts coming through, we should see it coming out the drain hole here. So we'll give it a few minutes. We'll put the choke on. So we're going to try and prime it just by turning it over. A lot of these engines require manifold pressure to pull the fuel through. So, yep, give it that. Up. Okay, so let's see if we've got fuel out of here yet.
Could there be a blockage?
It could be, but we haven't got fuel in there yet, so want to make sure we've got fuel coming into the fuel bowl, because otherwise there's no chance it's ever going to turn over when there's no fuel in there. So we can see our fuel line is hiding away behind the fuel tap in here. I don't have any indication as to which way this fuel tap is on or off. There's an arrow that says on, that points that way. I assume that's fuel tap on, and this says fuel turn that way. But it wouldn't be the first time I've seen these things written backwards. I don't know if I want to pull the fuel line off to see, because once we do that we won't be able to stop the fuel until it's all leaked out. But it may be blocked through. We've got to find a way to pull some of this fuel through. Okay, so we've got the fuel bowl off completely. We've got fuel in the tank. The fuel tap is on, and nothing's coming into the bowl. So clearly we've got a blockage or something somewhere. So we're going to remove these, take the top half of the carby off, and see if we can get access to something that will help us clean it or pull some fuel through. So let's move these taps out of the way. That whole section comes off. That's our air filter assembly, and that line goes into the manifold. Now if that has a vacuum problem, it's not going to suck fuel through. So you can also see the butterfly from our carby in here. So in choke mode it shuts it right down, running it goes full open. That's all good, and from there we can see our carby jet and everything. We'll take this gasket off, and this is our fuel tap, so we should see fuel coming in down into the fuel bowl from here if we do things right. But something is clearly not right at the moment. Okay, so undo that. Yeah, Phillips head screwdriver sizes can be very deceptive. Sometimes you choose the size up from the one that you think you need, and a lot of screws get stripped out, or screw heads, because people choose the size that's too small. But yeah, now let's take the top of our fuel tap off here. Can we do that? Well, it looks like it's wet with fuel. There's a spring washer in here, and we've got a little rubber gasket here. Pretty sure if I lift that up we will see fuel, but how we do that without damaging it is another matter. Now that would suggest that with this gallery in that position there, that will be open, so that will let fuel in and out that side. Okay, so that is, we've determined that yes, definitely the fuel tap in that position is open. We've got a bit of fuel available to this, but not really enough flow. The in-tank filter might be a bit blocked, but we do need to see if we can get a bit of flow coming through. We might use the vacuum pump for our oil and suck a bit of fuel through. I'll get my third hand here to pump some suction on this line. We'll see if we can pull some fuel through. Yeah, just pump away, go for it. Whoop. Oh, now we've got fuel coming through. Alright, that's good. Now we'll put that tap back on. Okay, now we need to put it all back together again fairly quickly. Okay, that did the job. Alright, see if we can get this back together before we have a fire on the desk. Now, we won't be starting this for a little bit until this dissipates. Let's get a rag here to soak this up before it gets too far under the engine. Alright, so let's just see here. Can we get... Okay, now we have fuel coming into the fuel bowl. Alright, so we've got it flowing. That's a good sign. Now let's reassemble our fuel bowl, and we'll see if we can get fuel coming out of the drain. Right, we're going to open our fuel tap now that we've got the fuel bowl on. The drain is currently out. We're going to see in a little bit, we should start to see some fuel come out the drain once that bowl fills up a little bit. There we go. We've got fuel coming through, which means our fuel bowl is now filling up. That is a good sign. Okay, now we're going to reassemble the rest of the carby, put it back together, see if we can make it at least cough. Okay, we've got the fuel tap full open, chokes on, throttle up. Let's give it a crank. Fires up. Alright, turn it off. Fires up first shot. I wonder if there's been a bit of junk in the fuel line all along. Alright, well I guess now we need to bolt it down to something and see how it works. Alright, we've got some captive nuts. We've bolted it to a board. We're going to do fuel tap on. We're going to do that on, turn to on, and let our extra hand pull start the thing. Yep. Alright, we might get the battery. Alright, so now the fuel bowl started dripping, so fuel bowl was obviously
it's
empty.
dripping again.
Let's see if we can start her up with a key. Okay, turn that off. And it's running nicely. And it's alive. Alright, so it runs really well aside from this problem. We'll turn the fuel tap off. That's a gasket problem or a washer. We can fix that pretty easily. I shoved a little rubber one in out of my plumbing kit and it's ballooned out the side. So we'll find a proper flat washer to seal that up. But other than that, it runs very nicely. Idles just about nicely. I think the problem that they've had with this all along was probably some junk in the fuel inlet, in the fuel line. So I think it starts very nicely now. In fact, if we turn our fuel tap on while it's warm, we can just start it up like this. Alright, so this turned out to be a nice little success. I will progress to the next step in another video about making a frame and adding an alternator and seeing how we can go with that. But this was understandably a bit of an emotional one, being as it's some of my deceased brother's property. So yeah, we will do some more with this in the future. And yes, both my brother and my father, my senior engineer, all had problems getting this to run, and they were going to progress to modifying the jet on the carby on this. And it turns out that there might have been some junk in the fuel line all along. Might have been a bit of rubber or a bit of manufacturing flashing, something like that, but seems to run okay now. So yeah, this will park up for a couple of weeks while we arrange some extra bits and pieces. Anyway, we'll see you in the next one. Hope it was fun, and of course if you subscribe at some point in the future, you might see another video on this.